heard earlier, the major concern for farmers and ranchers over the next year is weather. For livestock producers who have seen their costs skyrocket, some form of moisture on pastures and ranges is a necessity. We talked with Bruce Anderson Tuesday about two different scenarios for those areas, if the drought were to continue and if the drought were to end.
Well, I think one of the things we've got to recognize as producers start looking towards their spring grazing is that we're going to be moisture deficient in the soil. There's just no question about that. We go into the winter with low amounts of moisture in the soil. We can't build it up during the winter because of frozen soils and rather limited moisture that comes from snow. So our first hope for any kind of moisture will come with the spring rains. Even if we do get some spring rains, chances of that water soaking down all the way into the profile is pretty low, except maybe on some of our sandy sites. So we're going to start out the spring in deficit conditions. Also, we're going to start out the spring with plants that were heavily stressed by last year's drought, and so our expectations on how well they're going to be able to grow, even if we do get that moisture, is that we won't be able to get as much productivity as we might normally expect.
UNL is offering a series of short courses that are available on the beef website about two conditions: if the drought continues, if it doesn't continue. If it does continue, are there any options at all other than to try and get what you can out of it?
Well, certainly that's the first thing we have to be looking at there. I think especially if the drought does continue, one of the things we need to be thinking about is really long term, because as we put more stress onto our pastures, onto our hay grounds as a result of the drought, we're going to weaken and injure those plants. And we want to be looking at those plants still being alive so that once the drought does break, hopefully by next year, but maybe the year after that, they'll still survive and be able to provide feed to our livestock. So do no harm is kind of one of the things that we want to have as one of our focuses if the drought does continue.
Already injured from last year?
That's
plants?
right, already injured from last year, and that could multiply on them if the drought does continue in a real severe manner.
What does that mean for stocking rates for this year's pastures?
Well, if we have that drought continuing, our stocking rates are really going to have to be reduced down, and in most cases we're going to have to be looking for feed to give to the animals in more of a dry lot type of situation, or actually culling more of the herd so that we don't have the pressure of the cost and care that we would have on those animals.
How do you look at the turnout when you're turning the cows out into the pasture or the range, both if the drought were to end and if it weren't to end?
Well, I think one of the things we do feel confident of is that there's enough moisture, at least in the surface, that things are going to green up. And one of our temptations is going to be to go out there onto those pastures as soon as it greens up, because we're going to be darn tired of feeding this expensive hay all winter long. But that's going to be one of the worst things we could do. So no matter what the situation is, I think delaying when we turn out 10 days, 2 weeks, so that we can build up a little bit more growth off of those pastures and let those plants kind of recover from the stress of last year plus the stress of the wintertime is going to be one of the actionable things we have that we can do that will help out our grazing lands.
The high price feeds, like you mentioned, anything that producers could plant back into the ground to try and help out here?
Well, we need to try and be optimists and,
and
opportunists. It probably will rain sometime next growing season, and we need to be ready when that rain comes, if we do have land available, that we might be able to plant like an annual forage there when moisture is available. Certainly looking at things like oats, or possibly looking at things like the summer annuals as feeds that we might plant when there's moisture there available in the soil, are things that we got to be looking for ahead of time, so that when the opportunity presents itself, we've already secured the seed, we've already made our plans on what kind of tillage and planting we're going to do, so we can get those done on a timely basis rather than scrambling at the last minute to try and accomplish those objectives.
Do those take little enough moisture that if it weren't to rain very much, you'd still be okay?
In most cases, we can get something even with just a little bit of moisture.